we're back. Here again with Sol Gutierrez at her residence, and so we just got done talking about what it's like to run for council while also being in the legislature. Now, she's not just kind of sitting there in Annapolis doing nothing. She's working on some really important bills because, as I said, Hogan is in office, and while we are hoping that we can get someone nominated who can beat him, it could be that we've got another Republican governor term to contend with. And one of the things that I've noticed is that people say Hogan, oh, he's not so bad, he's kind of moderate. Yeah. But he wants to be reelected in a blue state. Yeah. And he's got a Democratic supermajority, which we should hold on to, or else things will look a lot different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very clear in Annapolis that we are in an election year. There's a lot more political action rather than the real work. But I was under Ehrlich also. My first period there was under Ehrlich, and ending it with under Hogan, and hopefully he ends it also. But you get a lot more done when you have a Democratic Party and a Democratic governor. Obviously, there is a lot more give and take, and you feel free to say we need to do this, and you lobby. I don't think I've met with Hogan maybe twice. And that's always in a group, the Women's Caucus or the Latino Caucus. But no, what I've been focusing on this time, it's really very different things. So let me share with you.
Sure.
Obviously, I think my big interest in what drives me is education. We have to make sure that we are closing those gaps, and that the kids that really need the extra resources and the extra the extra programs that they need are there. So one of the things that I have always been fighting for is to recognize the importance of language. We are a nation that's a monolingual nation, and so it isn't part of what we normally think is part of the education, and yet the development of language in any baby is incredibly important. So 2 years ago, I introduced something that finally passed, which is the Seal of Biliteracy, and that really just recognizes high school students that graduate with the ability to speak more than one language, and they have to prove it by getting a high score on an SAT or an IB program, but you get a seal on your transcript and on your diploma, and it just tells employers and colleges that you've done that extra mile. You have gained a level of knowledge in another language, and it rewards students that are good at that they're willing to do the work. And I think it's been important. Now, in Montgomery County, it's been incredible. We're trying to get to 50% of our graduating seniors to have the seal of biliteracy. So I think that's gonna last a longer time. But this year, I'm focusing on a couple of things. We're expanding in Montgomery County our dual language programs. We've had what's called one-way immersion programs for a long time here. We've had them in French and Chinese and in Spanish. And that means it was like a magnet. We wanted kids to come from other areas. Usually the magnet was in a low-income area. And so we brought in generally middle class, upper middle class kids. And they were taught in French or in English or Chinese. And they're very successful. However, they did not admit the students that already spoke that other language. So, for example, we have nearby Rock Creek Forest. Yeah, that's an immersion program. It's surrounded by Latino apartments, yet none of the students there were able to learn Spanish as well as English. So my proposal is now in the direction that Montgomery County is finally going. It's called two-way immersion or dual language, and that means that every child learns two languages, and they're taught in two languages. And what it does is it recognizes the asset that children bring to the school because they've been speaking another language at home for 5 years, and they enter the school and we're not valuing that knowledge and that ability. So a dual language program would build on the natural language of both English speakers and non-English speakers. So creating a program at the state level that will set standards, best practices, because right now Prince George's is doing something, we're doing something, and it really is kind of helter-skelter. So we need some expertise. And we also need bilingual teachers. And in Maryland, we don't have the bilingual teaching certificate. So one of my bills creates that so that indeed University of Maryland, all of the universities that prepare teachers are now going to be able to offer a bilingual teaching certificate that someone who's currently a teacher will be able to get and know then how to teach in a classroom that has kids speaking two languages. It's amazing we don't have that. We have to import teachers. But that's why we also don't have the programs with qualified teachers in any place in the state of Maryland. So I'm hoping that those will be easy. They're kind of wonky, but nobody will get excited about them. But they're absolutely building blocks if we are going to go and expand language opportunities. Another one, total change in subject matter, is one that this wonderful group of women, I don't know if you know them, the Court Watch Montgomery, they're about 57 women that are volunteers, and they go every day and sit in on the domestic violence hearings, especially around protective orders and peace orders. And they wrote a wonderful report 2 years ago, and in that report they found that the way in which the judge directs the especially the preliminary protective order, temporary protective order, he's not always directing that the respondent, the person who's being accused or the claim against which is being made, has to give up their guns. And they have to. By federal law, anybody who is a respondent on a domestic violence or a peace order, that minute they must surrender their guns. And their sheriffs don't ask for it. So what happens is that those moments are very critical. They're packed with emotion. And statistics show that between the first complaint and the second trial, because they do have to serve the respondent. He doesn't usually come with a woman when she makes her complaint, but when they do show up together, that period of time, which is a week to 10 days, is 5 times more chance that the woman will get shot.
Wow.
That if there are guns, that woman will get shot. So my bill is really simple. It doesn't even change the law, other than say at the very beginning you need to hand a written and preferably in red directions to the respondent that he must surrender his weapons. Also tells them where to do it and gives them a time frame. They must do it in 24 hours. And then by the time they come to the protective hearing, if the woman says he has guns, or if there's any still sense of guns being available, the sheriff has a search warrant to go and get the guns. It's simple. It's not rocket science, but I'm hoping that it'll heighten the awareness both in the court for the judge to be clearer and make sure that he's asking for guns, and that the sheriff is also going to be focusing on guns. What we had in a case that was shown, I had video on it, is that the sheriff is more concerned about where the guy's going to spend the night because he can't go back to his home, and is very sympathetic to the respondent. And in this case, the man got his things, left, came back in the morning, went upstairs, and they had 3 small kids who called the police and said, "My parents are fighting," and then there were shots, and he killed her and he killed himself, and now they're 3 orphan children. And if only the sheriff had said, "Oh, by the way, do you have any guns? You need to surrender them." That could have been avoided. So that is the bill. I'm hoping that it'll get support. It's very hard to take guns away from anybody, even in the state of Maryland, where we have very strong gun laws. But there's a mentality that you really don't need any more laws to protect. So we'll see what happens with that. And then, my final one is the one that I'm really very excited and proud. It's the reincarnation of the Trust Act from last year. It is called the SAFE Act, and that's supporting all families everywhere. And what it is a bill that aims to protect immigrants in the state of Maryland. It clarifies that police will not collaborate with ICE, will not support them, and they need to make sure that people trust the police, so that if something is happening, that they feel free to go to the police. But the most important thing is a detail. It's what is called a detainer, where ICE can order a police to hold someone after they've served their sentence, for them to come and pick them up. And since last year, that was kind of a real tough point. It didn't pass in the Senate. It passed in the House. But since then, our wonderful Attorney General, Frosh, has issued a report that clearly says that detaining anybody for even 1 second after they're free to go is unconstitutional and a violation of their civil rights. So this is, perhaps it can be thought of as it makes Maryland a sanctuary state. California, Illinois, lots of cities have this kind of protections. I'm sure that there is going to be a lot of objections, especially in an election year. People don't want to be seen, siding with immigrants, not in this environment right now. But I think it's really important, especially now, because it's especially now that we have families that are living in fear every day. And we know that the direction of the administration is to increase deportations, see who you can stop, go to the courts. We still can't stop them from going to the courts and stopping people. So I think it's a critical bill, and I'm hoping that we'll have lots of support. What's been amazing from this year to last year is that there are about 15 Montgomery County activist grassroots groups that are really supporting it. Montgomery County Civil Rights Coalition, the Indivisible groups, two different them, the OR or Revolution, lots of incredible grassroots understanding of the plight of immigrants and really wanting to protect. And that to me is maybe a culmination of a long struggle.
Wow.
Now when my friends are going to want to make sure that ICE does not take their gardener or whoever's been working with them, I think it's really positive.
Wow. There's so much to respond to on that. We don't have time to discuss in detail all three, but first with the immigration, it seems like, okay, when people hear the word sanctuary state, I recall Hogan last year said, we will not be a sanctuary state, just point blank. People have a lot of misconceptions.
Absolutely.
And the right likes to, even some of the independents, they like to paint it as a picture of, okay, we're going to allow illegals to go and do and murder and rape and do whatever they want, and no one. Okay, yeah, it's not saying crime is not looked at. It's just saying you're not going to cooperate with ICE and the random deportations without. So if someone commits a crime, then they commit a crime, and if you happen to be
and we
undocumented,
have the laws.
You
have the laws that are going to protect that. Yes, exactly. Yeah, no, but you're right. And it's being exploited. Sessions, our Secretary of Justice, is saying he's going after all of these sanctuary states. Well, if he does, what he's doing is violating the Constitution. Saying that people can be detained without any reason. And what's really interesting, which is also different from last year, this time we have a bill from the opposition. A Republican, Delegate Shalega, with the help of Help Save Maryland, because we have an organization called Help Save Maryland that puts me on their website and makes me enemy number 1 for them, which I'm very proud of being.
I heard all about HSM.
Yeah, so you know about them.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they put in a bill that would make Maryland the first state in the world, I think, that permits the Department of Homeland Security, ICE, to go to any facility of detention or corrections. If there is an undocumented person there for whatever reason, they can take them no matter what. They can take them and deport them. So due process out the window, justice out the window, so it's going to be heard on the same day. So I'm really kind of excited to sit and hear what they're going to be saying.
It should be interesting to take down the names of who's for that bill.
Yeah.
It's just really dehumanizing how people just like to characterize people who are undocumented as illegals.
And now it's worse.
It's real murky. It's a lot of people, I know people who are DACA, and it wasn't even their choice. And this immigration system is so convoluted.
Absolutely.
And so it's not, I'm just going to go to the U.S. and I don't care about the law.
Yeah.
There's so many complications involved.
Absolutely. The people ask me, why don't they just become citizens? As if all of the people that are undocumented are sitting there and saying, I'm not going to become a citizen. I just want to be undocumented. It is so incredibly ignorant.
No one wants to be undocumented.
Nobody wants. Nobody, if they had a choice. And I teach a course on impact of immigration law on state and local government, because people think that immigration law is federal, but we, the states and our localities, have the education, have the transportation, have the housing, have all of the protections that individuals who are here as immigrants, undocumented, not or legal, we need to take care of them the same way that we take care of anybody else. And so we are now seeing through Trump and echoed by Sessions and everybody, that all of a sudden all young men particularly are MS-13. I mean, I'm going to get a tattoo with MS-13 so that, I can show that MS-13 is really not everybody. We are not all gang members. I mean, I really think we have the laws and we need to apply them to anybody that commits any crime. But there are story after story of young men being singled out. They have to raise their shirt to see if they have any tattoos on their body. And in Long Island, many of them were put into detention centers for no reason. I mean, that's where I go to the vulnerability of our systems and our principles. Is that something we want to be doing? Putting people in detention for no reason and holding them there, for as long as whatever. It just seems absolutely wrong.
Yeah, and it's there's just so much to respond on that. Not even sure where to begin, but a lot of people that are here undocumented. I mean, I personally know at least one person, and the people are on their toes. Like the idea that undocumented immigrants are going to commit crimes is so absurd, because I mean, if you look at the statistics, I can link to it later under the YouTube video. It's much lower, and that makes sense because you're terrified. I mean,
the consequences are too
serious.
They're
so serious. I know people that they're afraid to cross the street when the light is blinking to be arrested for jaywalking. It's they're on their toes. They're working on eggshells. These are the last people you're going to expect to commit violent crimes.
And with DACA students, to me, my God, if ever we needed proof of what happens when you have an immigrant and you give them an opportunity. This is a model group of young people. I mean, they're overeducated from the average of Americans. They're overemployed. They're earning more than the average. They are so productive and giving back so much, paying taxes. And yet, under Trump, well, sorry, we need to end the program. And if Congress doesn't do anything, ciao, bye-bye, you're deported. With no place to go. And what a loss to the United States, to have 700,000, 800,000 kids, and they have brothers and sisters, many who are U.S. citizens. We're tearing up those families. That cannot be the policy of the United States. That cannot be. That's not the America that I know. And that's what I don't want to live in that America.
No. So, in the interest of time, I want to combine just my last closeout question with the second point you made about guns. I recently read in the Post an editorial that said it's common sense. If you beat your wife, you lose your gun. And it reminded me a lot of the bill you proposed. But going back to something we mentioned in the first half, that at the state level, you found it challenging to get your bills passed because they're too progressive. Now, a lot of people who are less familiar with the actual individuals in Annapolis might assume, how is that possible? Maryland is this epic blue state. Yeah. How is it possible that you can't get your progressive bills passed in a state that's oh so progressive? Yeah. I'm less surprised. I know a lot of the people I support in Montgomery County, but people who I don't support in Montgomery County, I wouldn't characterize a lot of them as progressive. And I know that some legislators from elsewhere around the state, they're kind of Democratic in name only.
And in Montgomery County, too.
Yeah. I mean, don't name names, but combining these two issues, what is your strategy to convince a conservative Democrat or as a voter, an independent, on this bill, which is, from our perspective, it makes sense. If there's a risk of domestic violence in this example, why should you be able to add a gun to the mix? That's going to compound the problem and just make the risk of death, homicide, exponentially worse. But you know exactly what the counter argument is. Yeah. Oh, you're going to let the government take our guns. Yeah. And a lot of what Democrats are trying to defend is, no, we're not asking the government to come in and take your guns. We just want responsible, you have a license, you have a background check. But if this bill does say we're going to take a gun away, what is your strategy to convince swing voters in the legislature on this?
Well, and maybe I know I'm different, because to me facts matter. It's important to have the facts straight. So not everybody is going to be convinced with facts, but I think that is where I start. And so, for example, my bill doesn't change any law. You are already, by federal mandate and by state mandate, you are supposed to surrender your guns if there is a complaint about domestic violence against you. Or it could be a peace order. That's between a neighbor or a friend, a boyfriend. The difference with protective orders and peace orders is that there's a relationship, and usually people living together or have had kids together, that is a protective order. The peace order is any other kind of relationship. It's exactly the same process. The person goes to a court or a courthouse or to a commissioner or police station and files a complaint and says, I am afraid of this person. He has threatened me, X, Y, and Z. And immediately, that's the beauty of a protective order, is that the temporary protective order or the temporary peace order immediately makes that person not allowed to be near you. There's no time and let's discuss it. That happens 1 week later. But that moment, that person cannot be near the complainant. And that is where the federal law says you must surrender your guns. So the judge in their orders do have little pieces of information, but they sometimes don't ask the person, do you have guns? Do you know that it's a crime for you to have guns? You must surrender them. And they don't tell them what the sheriff also needs to know is, where do you surrender them? How do I get rid of them? And the sheriff, if the judge hasn't said it, the sheriff also needs to make it part of his interest. He needs to feel that it's also part of his job. So I'm not changing any law. The laws are there. I'm just kind of making them so difficult to ignore. I guess that's what I want. I don't want the judge, and I don't want the sheriff to ignore it.
Well, there you go. And again, like I recently wrote, it's why can't getting a gun be like getting a driver's license?
Exactly.
You have to pass a test. You have to show a reasonable cognitive ability and competence using a weapon, because a car could be a weapon, as is a gun, which is primary intent is a weapon. It just seems logical. But the NRA isn't about gun safety. It's about buy more guns.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm in a way, it's sad that out of tragedy, we are now seeing perhaps more and more interest, especially by young people. I am so proud of the young people from Parkland and from Montgomery County that joined them and marched. And there's a major march coming up. I'm going to try to see if I'm not in Annapolis. I will be joining them. I think demonstrating and having your voice heard is a very important thing to do.
Yeah, if I'm not at work, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, I'll see you there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're just about out of time, but we're keeping each of these at least under 30 minutes. But thank you so much, and best of luck with your council campaign and what you're trying to do up in Annapolis or over in Annapolis. People say up as if it's north, or some people say down. It's east. It's east.
Come join me.
Please
I'd
get
love
more than 4 hours of sleep.
Yes.
At least on weekends. I slept till 10 this
no
morning. It was
way.
amazing. Well, I was up till 4. I usually get up at 4.
So you only slept 6.
But sometimes on weekends I can sleep 9. But weekdays like 5, 6. But you should sleep more.
Yeah.
We need you at least primarily to get these through, and then of course in your own race. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. This has been wonderful. I really enjoy it, and I particularly like that you are making us get better known among the younger our younger citizens, because I think there's a difficulty in communicating, and yet when you start on the subject, like, look how much we have agreed on what we
as listeners, as viewers, you have a responsibility to like and share, so this gets out. So thank you for watching, and I've got Will Smith is going to come when we finally match our days. We've been talking about this for months, but and there's and Chris Wilhelm is going to be on, and
he got arrested with me last time.
That's a badge of honor these days. So keep watching, keep reading the blog, and attend the event I'm having in 2 weeks. So thanks for being a viewer, listener, whatever, of the MoCo Millennial, even if you're not a millennial.
Good.